This is Austin and Matt. I'm Austin.
This is Matt.
And this week we watched The Last Duel, right? The Last Duel? The final duel? The Last Duel?
Yes, last duel.
There
Yes.
we go. Starring Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and many other people. But, if you like what you hear, please subscribe. Matt, tell me, what did you enjoy about this?
Oh my gosh, I love this movie so much. I'm gonna just start by saying that it was an absolute travesty that this movie failed at the box office. I don't know if you remember. I'm sure it was overshadowed by some other things, but it was made fun of at the Oscars a lot for being the movie that nobody saw, which is a huge like. I'm disappointed in myself for not seeing this because I just thought it was really, really good. Um, for starters, it is a Rashomon type of story. Rashomon is a movie that I really, really enjoyed when I watched it in college for my film theory class. And so every time I kind of see like a Rashomon story type or story type of story where you see different the same story told from different points of view, I get really excited and I get really into it. I think this is probably one of the movies that has done it the best. I would even argue this is like better than Rashomon in a lot of ways because it is so in depth and you see so much more. If you want to see a cool movie, go see Rashomon. Uh, so that was great. Always love a good Rashomon story. This also, I feel like, gives a little less ambiguity than Rashomon, which I actually enjoy. Like Rashomon really. So Rashomon actually. So this movie, you see three different stories. Rashomon, you actually see four. And I would kind of argue that I argued when I first saw that the fourth story was probably the closest to reality because of who was telling the story. And then someone kind of pointed out, but they had every reason to kind of skew the story in their own way because of ABC. So I feel like The Last Duel gives a little less ambiguity. Like I feel like one of these stories in particular is probably closer to reality than the others. Like I would trust one of these stories more. Um, I don't want to go into too much, detail for spoilers. Um, this movie also, I think, and again, Rashomon is older. It's black and white, so I don't know what kind of the world was like during then and how this movie kind of informed the world that people lived in then. The Last Duel, on the other hand, really informs the world that we live in. Like there was part of me that felt like, oh, this movie could have taken place in 2023 in like all of the exact same ways. The only difference being that there weren't swords, like there weren't castles. Like it is so much a story about a woman who is being totally dismissed, and everything that's going on is not even about her, which is awful. Like in so many ways, I feel like this movie plays out in like really horribly similar ways to what it would play out like in our own world. So I thought that was like I loved how topical it was considering like some of the things that have been experienced in the last few years. Again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, so I'm being a little vague. Anyway, Austin, what did you like about this movie?
Yeah. There's a lot of good points you brought out there. Biggest thing for me is I love when the story goes through and focuses so much on characters. Like character development for me is huge in movies, and that's really all this movie is like we develop with three characters and then we see an outcome that comes out. And what what I'm really interested in is like the outcome that we saw was from like everyone's perspective in terms of like the audience of what happened. But I also wonder if there's any things of like where how it was actually addressed or perceived might have been a little differently for other people. So they kind of could have expanded on it a little bit more. But anyways, the dueling itself, I think was done fantastic. Like there's so many fight scenes in this movie that like they really stick very particular to how things were fought back then, specifically to like how swords were held and like the individual combat and things. Like when I compared this movie to like let's say like the Knight's Tale in terms of like how the dueling went, they start out the same, but then this takes a much deeper route of like how vicious these things can actually be, and I loved that. I thought that was so much like I was sucked into it to where it was I don't know, I was kind of like in between things at the moment, and I like stopped and like just made sure to give it my full attention. It was incredible. uh
Also, I need to mention, as I mentioned to you before, the duel was incredibly intense for me, and I think I was holding my breath. And when the duel ended, I almost passed out. I thought it was a fantastic scene. Like, if a movie can get me that tense, I think it happened to me during Children of Men, where I'm holding my breath, and then suddenly it's like, "Ugh, ugh, I'm 1 second, I'm dizzy. I need to pause for a second. But anyway, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, that was really huge for me, and I had a great time with it. But really just, I mean, going down to just the credits, like Ridley Scott directed this. It's done super well. Each cinematography of each saw, like a lot of like the landscapes and things like that, just looked beautiful for what's happening. One of my favorite scenes in this movie involves like a forest, and then there's like arrows that come into it. Like that whole thing is just like, I would probably be like shitting my pants if I was in that situation and just like see people charge in. I was like, oh, okay, all right, like we're different people. But yeah, like I'll kind of end it there. Like there's other things I can gush on about, but like as a whole, I thought it was very entertaining. It is a little bit longer, I will give it that, but for the part of how they were trying to tell the story, I think it was beautifully done. Matt, any critique points? Anything you didn't enjoy about this?
So I have one big one that I felt was painfully clear. This is a movie that is trying to point out how much it sucks that old white men run everything, and it is a movie made by old white men who run everything. So I
Oops.
thought like that was like painfully obvious to me. Like I was like, had Ridley Scott produced this, and Ben Affleck worked on the script, and they brought in a female director who helped on the script and directed it. Like I think that I would have liked that a lot more. That being said, though, I feel like the point I just made is kind of overshadowed by the fact that I actually do think like this movie became Jodie Comer's movie. Like she was the absolute best part of the movie. Her performance was unreal. The fact that you could see three separate stories with her bringing in three very different subtleties to her performance was like unreal. I think that she was robbed at the Oscars. She didn't even get a nomination for this. Like I just was blown away by her. Like that's the one caveat to this. Like yes, this was a movie made by old white men complaining about old white men, but then she comes in and is like she takes over the screen. She's magnetic. She blew me away. So like that's kind of my dislike. That is kind of a little bit of a like because I thought she just did so good. I'm kind of like okay, I don't care that it was made by old white men. She just like blew me away. You know the whole movie. And that's my other dislike. Is Jodie Comer seriously didn't get an Oscar nomination for this? Like I cannot believe, and I know Oscars are kind of whatever, and they probably just didn't really campaign for it the way that other movies did. Like I hear that's what a lot of the Oscars is, but I just thought she really deserved some like serious attention and serious accolade for what she accomplished here. But
Yeah.
Austin, what did you dislike about this movie?
Yeah, it's freaking long, dude. Like I never
You
the
know, I
run.
usually complain about long movies.
I
It
know.
didn't bother me this time.
Yeah, so like when I pulled up, I was like, oh, all right, we're looking at like a 2.5 hour runtime here. Like that's a bit long. So what I will say is like for it being a really long movie, they do put like some action part in there to keep you entertained for it. My critique point is that as this is a telling of three different stories, there may have been some points that we could have condensed down a little bit and helped the pace of this story a little bit. I will admit, like the first chapter, because this movie goes in chapters. The first chapter, I was confused as to like where are we at, and like once chapter 2 started, I was like, wait, what are we doing right now? So like, I got a little disoriented right there. So maybe condensing it down a little bit and kind of go from there. But honestly, that's a small critique point for it. The acting I think is incredible. I think they did a great job. I also really enjoyed how I know this is like critique points, but like how in one perspective somebody can be so loved, and then in another perspective somebody could be so like pretty much disgusting. So it was is very interesting, and like going through and watching the movie, I 1000% understand why Adam Driver signed on for this movie, because he does some of the weirdest movies that are just like he's like, oh, I gotta like be different, or like it's not just like a straightforward acting movie. Cool, count me in. Like a Marriage Story is a great example of that. A bad example of it is Annette, where he just
Yeah.
he's like he just really likes these artsy movies. But yeah, that's really small for me.
See, I feel like Nanette was a big misstep for him. I usually enjoy what he does, but dude, we reviewed Nanette on this on our channel, and I just remember being like, man, this movie, I don't know what's going on here, but I am not into this.
It was so rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this one I was able to make it all the way through. So you know what? Whatever. Maybe that was Matt Damon that was really pulling me along.
I also thought Matt Damon did a great job too. I thought he was really good in it, and I loved he just looked like I it was like that. I do think a lot of movies that take place in kind of medieval times like this kind of like romanticize it, and like looking at Matt Damon in this is like, yeah, that guy's rugged because in medieval times he's probably like 30 and he looks like he's getting close to 60. Like that's what the medieval times are like. There's a part where like it shows his feet and they're just absolutely awful. Yeah, I loved like his character just as what he looked like worked really really well.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I think the only thing he maintained on like his whole physique was that mullet. So he's always keeping the mullet fresh, and then just making sure that like his facial scar is always in clear display.
Yeah. I was also super impressed by I forgot her name, the Queen.
Mm.
I thought her performance alone had like a lot of subtlety, where you could tell like she had an opinion on what was going on, but she wasn't sharing it or allowed to share it. The King as well. I thought the King. Did you recognize the King, by the way?
I didn't recognize him.
Have you seen Black Mirror?
No.
Oh, never mind then. Okay, that's what I recognized him from. But you haven't seen Black Mirror. But yeah, I thought her performance was good. She's a girl. She was in the Nice Guys with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe when she was young. That was her.
Okay.
Spider-Man. I think she plays Betty Brant in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So.
What's wild is I watched The Nice Guys like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, she's a lot younger in it then. She's one of those actresses who she's like getting into her like 20s, but she can play high schoolers because she's just still looks really really young. So,
anyways, we're getting on tangents here. If you like what we heard, please like, subscribe. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.
See you, buddy.